You're an economist, Professor Sachs, and you have come out very firmly against sanctions. You were co-author of that landmark report on sanctions on Venezuela, and you've also talked a lot about sanctions on Syria. But sanctions has been a principal weapon in this aggressive posture the United States has taken toward, and the entire West really has taken toward Russia and China. Russia is now the most sanctioned country in the world, and China has been facing deeper and deeper sanctions on areas like high technology and, of course, on these human rights issues in Xinjiang, etc. Uh, could you talk about what are the impact of these sanctions in particular on Russia and China now on the entire global economy? What do you see their impact as being? And yeah, I just want to know generally your take on this form of economic warfare that the U.S. is leading toward these two major powers, rising powers in the world.
Well, first, just to be clear, the U.S. puts sanctions all over the place, and often it creates havoc for the countries involved. One of the biggest peacetime collapses in modern history is Venezuela because of the comprehensive U.S. sanctions, which crushed the oil sector of Venezuela and crushed the Venezuelan economy. The idea was very clear. The idea was to try to overthrow President Maduro. Well, I don't think that's a legitimate aim of foreign policy, period. Why does the U.S. use sanctions? Because it's just the stroke of a pen of the president. Because Congress isn't asked, the American people aren't asked, no one pays attention to this. The suffering that sanctions cause or the disruptions that they cause are not noticed. There's no direct outlays. There are no boots on the ground. So it's viewed as a freebie. But it's extraordinarily destructive. And in my understanding, with extensive discussions with international legal experts and human rights specialists, it's against international law, as it should be, because it's a unilateral action which is imposing extraordinarily high costs on others. Now, what it's doing in vis-a-vis Russia, ironically, is having a massive disruption of the world economy, probably hurting Europe. I don't know if it's right to say as much as it's hurting Russia, but a massive boomerang effect in Europe, because basically Europe traded with Russia. The United States calls it dependence on Russian energy. I call it trade. It's this the difference of economists and these geopolitical strategists. Europe was importing Russian natural gas and oil, and it was exporting other things to Russia. And the sanctions have broken all of that down, disrupted supply chains, directly impacting Europe, but we know also impacting the whole world. Suddenly fertilizer shortages, food price increases, incredibly volatile energy increases, big disruptions to the world natural gas markets. We've made a mess. The theory in the United States was this was going to cripple the Russian economy and end the Russia's war-making capacity. And I wrote on general principles, I have to say, not on any specific quantified model, but I wrote on general principles in the spring. Don't bet on it. These sanctions are very destructive, but they rarely have their intended outcomes. After all, we crushed the Venezuelan economy, but Maduro is there. Thank you very much. And now we're reopening relations because we want their oil suddenly. So this is typical U.S. policy. You do a huge amount of damage, you pay no attention, and you just go on. Another, by the way, set of sanctions is the United States grabbed the foreign exchange reserves of Afghanistan on the way out last year. Unbelievable. That's their foreign exchange reserves. We took their central bank's foreign exchange reserves, $8 billion, and the economy imploded. It was already in awful shape, but you can't run a country without a central bank, without foreign exchange reserves. But with the United States, hey, why not? No problem. That's typical.